So we were talking before the show about, who are the players that Notre Dame can least afford to lose?
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that there's not just one, but we are going to pick one. And so we're going to kind of go through and talk about some of the players that we have on this discussion, why some of these guys are in the conversation, and then also we'll name our one, because I don't think it's like some people are like, I'm reading the chat and they're like, well, it's a no-brainer, it's so and so. Well, I don't think it's quite that easy. It's definitely
really
this guy. Well, and so we both talked like we both have one guy. It's the same guy, but it wasn't easy to get there. And so here's what we mean by like irreplaceable. It's not the best player.
No.
It's not the guy that is at the biggest prime position or whatever the case may be. It's more of a who's the guy that if you lose him, your chances of playing for a championship are diminished the most. And I think of the guys that we talked about, I think all of them are they would hurt to lose them. Like Michael Mayer's the first one that popped in my head. When you lose Michael Mayer, you lose an arguably the best tight end in college football. There's no doubt about it. Reason we didn't pick Michael Mayer, Sean, is because it's partly because, number one, you're pretty talented there. Number two, you don't have to have a tight end. You can adjust other things, right? So it'd be a big loss, but they could potentially weather that storm, right?
Yeah.
Like they lost Michael Mayer last year, didn't have him for the Virginia Tech game, still went on the road and beat Virginia Tech without Michael Mayer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not ideal. We're not saying, they're totally fine. Adam Zillak just put Lorenzo Styles. That was a guy that was on my list that you kind of were like, oh, okay, wasn't expecting that one. But then when you think about it, he's the most complete receiver they have skill set wise. I don't know if there's another Lorenzo Styles type of player on the roster. That's why I thought about him. Defensively, Isaiah Foskey.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, losing him. But then you start thinking like, okay, why isn't Isaiah Foskey the pick? Well, because if they had to go to battle with Justin Adamiola, I think they still have a pretty good football player there.
Yeah.
And there's some things you can do schematically, blitz-wise, to say, hey, look, here's why I think they could be okay with him. Cam Hart is probably my number two overall because of where the depth chart is. There's a big difference in talent between him and somebody else. And if I was going to pick one on each side of the ball, Cam Hart's probably my pick on defense.
And because he locks Tariq in at his strength.
Right. So it wasn't an easy decision, but at the end of the day, Sean, you and I both went with Tyler Buchner is the most irreplaceable player. Again, we've said before, you can win a lot of games with Drew Pine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this 2022 version of Notre Dame can compete for a championship unless they have that dynamic run-throw ability that Tyler Buchner is going to bring to the table.
I was right there with you with the top two. It was Tyler Buchner, it was Cam Hart, and then for me, the next one was Brandon Joseph because of what I've been talking about, how he's elevated that back end and brought the mentality that was totally different. Not mentality, let me use the word more of unity in a group of playing together.
Right.
And I don't have to go deep into that, but those are my top three guys. And there was another person that I thought about, but then I said, oh, yeah, Harry Hiestands back.
Were you going to say Blake Fisher or Jarrett Patterson?
Jarrett Patterson.
Oh.
Just, being the guy, the leader of that front, everybody else being young. You could go with either one of the tackles.
Yeah.
Right? Because Marcus Freeman has been honest about having a 1A and 1B.
Right.
And one of the units he hasn't seen that yet is at the offensive line group.
Right.
Specifically at the backup tackles. So, yeah, you could say all Blake Fisher. But with Harry Hiestand being the guy that's developing these guys and getting them ready, I feel a lot better about losing one of those guys if we had to lose them.
Yeah.
And, so my top three were Buckner, Cam Hart, and then Brandon Joseph third. But Tyler Buchner, if you had asked me this question maybe 2 months ago, I'll be honest. The spring game scared me to death. It just flat out scared me to death. I left that And if you ask me what's one of my biggest fears going into the season, backup quarterback situation is definitely one of them. Like, I thought it was solidified. I thought I would be confident. And it's not, a lot of people say, oh, well, that's just a practice. It's like, I was at practices as well. And I think we both have shared that, one quarterback was better the majority of the practices. So.
And for me, it's not even just that. Because I'm very high on Drew Pine, and I'm not ready to just give up on Drew Pine because he had a bad spring game. My stance on spring games. I mean, he had a bad spring, period. But we've heard of guys have bad. I mean, Maris Luafau, we were told, didn't have a great spring last year. His breakout came during the summer and early in fall camp. Like, he was just making plays, but didn't have a great spring last year. It's more about, I think that Drew Drew, as I call it, he's a point guard quarterback.
Yeah.
But the standard that we talked about before is not, can Notre Dame still be really good with Drew Pine? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Notre Dame is a good football team with Drew Pine at quarterback if he is who we think he is, right? And kind of shakes off the spring rust and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think he can be that kind of guy. The thing is, though, Sean, is the premise was very clear. Not which guy, hurt you and to where you're going to go 4-8, because I don't think there's anybody that they lose and they're going 4-8 next year. It's more of your standard now. The standard that Irish Breakdown holds for Notre Dame is not changing because there's a coach that we like compared to one we didn't like. That would be unfair, and we're not going to do that. The standard is still the same. Championships. Are you going to win and compete for a championship? And to me, my number 2 is Cam Hart. My number 3 is Isaiah Foskey, because I still feel like a dominant defensive end. Cam Hart is a combination of talent plus what's next is a little scarier. The reason I went with him over Foskey is because even though I think Isaiah Foskey is the only guy to me on the roster that can contend with Michael Mayer for best player, and I would argue that he is their best player. Michael Mayer's in the best player on offense. I still think Foskey is going to have a shot to be their best player this year. It's a great debate to have because they're both great players, Mayer and Foskey. But the reason I went with Cam Hart is because if Notre Dame has to go to battle with Riley Mills on one side and Justin Adamiola, and they would just move Jordan Patelho over to Viper and rotate in with Justin Adamiola, there's a lot of teams that would love to have that 1-2 punch at Viper or weak side end of Adamiola and Patelho with Aiden Gobira and Josh Burnham growing and you know what I mean, trying to work there too. Does that make sense? So it's more about the health of the depth chart than it is anything about Foskey.
Right.
The reason I'd go with Foskey over Brandon Joseph is twofold. Number one is, even though I agree with everything you said, that's a pretty healthy depth chart. There's a drop off between Brandon Joseph and Howard and Houston Griffith and DJ Brown and those other guys, but those guys can play. We've seen them play. We know they can play.
Yeah.
And if Foskey's there and Brandon Joseph isn't, he can have a greater impact on the defense because of his ability to rush the quarterback than if Foskey's not there and Brandon Joseph is. Right. That's the way I look at it.
Definitely. Right? That's a good way of looking at it.
Right. And so it's not a look of who's the best player, because if it's about who's the best players, then the guy you can't lose on offense is Michael Mayer. He's their best player. Right. He might. I think he's the best tight end in college football. If you say, hey, Brian, you could trade Michael Mayer for any tight end in college football, I'd be like, I'm good. Pass. Yeah. But again, it's just the position. You can go 3 tight receivers, you can go 4 receivers, you can put a second back on the field. You've got other tight ends that are quality players, and you're going to get some more. So you can at least be good there. You're not going to be great there, but you can at least be good there. You can be serviceable there and overcome it in other ways. At the end of the day, the makeup of the Notre Dame football team with the injury questions at running back, I think the running back position group, if they're healthy, is going to be nasty this year. I think Tyree's going to break out. Yeah. I think Logan Diggs is a good football player. I think Audric Estime, if he gets his shot, is going to really come out of nowhere and surprise some people. I think Jabron Payne can play. I think Jadarian Price is going to be a good one. But Jadarian Price was banged up his entire junior year of high school. Jabron Payne's had 2 devastating injuries. Chris Tyree wasn't healthy last year, and he wasn't healthy all spring. And Logan Diggs tore his labrum. There's only one back right now that hasn't had some level of really big injury that either kept him out or kept him from being at his best, because Jadarian didn't really miss any time as a junior. He just wasn't 100%. And that's why a lot of schools didn't go after him, because he just wasn't as good as a junior, because he was battling an injury all year. And and Jadarian, if you've heard anything, if you know anything about him and his family's coach, never told anybody about it. Like Smitty found out about it because he was at the high school and somebody said it to him like in passing. Oh yeah, he's more explosive because he was injured all year last year. Jadarian won't talk about that. I answered the bell. I was there to play, but everybody else has had a significant injury history. And so you have a guy like Tyler Buchner, he can take some of the pressure off of that in a way that Drew Pine and Steve Angeli cannot, no matter how good you may think they are as throwers. And I think that as we talked about in the podcast yesterday, Sean, I think it was me and Ryan at that point in time, Tyler Buchner as a runner just puts so much stress on the defense that you have to account for. And then also I think that the receiving core has potential, but there's still a lot of question marks there. And there's some injuries, guys coming back from injuries. Is Joe Wilkins going to be healthy? How's Avery Davis's situation going to be? Is Tobias Merriweather going to be able to play as a freshman? Can Braden Lindsey stay healthy? Is Deion Colsey ready to step up? Is Jaden Thomas ready to emerge as a key rotator? There's a lot of question marks there, where if you can have a dynamic quarterback that can make plays on his own and elevate everyone around him, you lose that, and all of a sudden some of these other warts, if they're there, all of a sudden pop up. If those warts aren't there and the receiving core is healthy, the backfield is healthy, then you add him with his dynamic ability. That's where you become an elite offense. So I think either way, Tyler Buchner has to be there. And I think it's not just that. Like, he needs to then play to his potential. He doesn't have to be an elite 5-star quarterback. He doesn't have to throw for 4,000 yards and rush for 700 and account for 40-plus touchdowns and complete 70% of his passes. He just has to be a playmaker. He's going to have his rough moments. He just needs to be a playmaker. And if he can be healthy and be a playmaker, then I think this offense has a chance to be really good. Because, Sean, you'll say it. You've said it. I've seen clips of practice. I know that you've been at practice. Tyler Buchner can do things as a thrower that none of the other quarterbacks in the roster can do. And I don't think people realize that. I don't think, because they didn't get a chance to see that in games last year. Yeah. And I'm not talking about running around, and I'm talking about dropping back, reading things, his anticipation, his timing, his ability to take chances, all that stuff. Notre Dame fans haven't had a chance to see that yet. We have, and that's why we have that level of confidence in Tyler Buchner that maybe others don't, fairly, because they just haven't seen it because of how he was used last year. His role in games was not what Notre Dame views him as being. They don't view him as being Brandon Wimbush.
Right.
They view him as more of a Brandon Wimbush as a runner and Everett Golson as a passer. And you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing.
And I told you
about
3 weeks ago, I hit you and I'm like, yo, I watched this Virginia Tech game again. And it's like, yo, I'm a little more optimistic about Tyler Buchner than I was.
Yeah.
Because I had to take a step back and be fair about what was going on. Like, Michael Mayer wasn't there. He came in.
They're down 10-0.
Yeah. And then they take the lead. Virginia Tech, they make some adjustments. You really don't have a guy like Michael Mayer to back them off of you.
Tyree was hurt.
Tyree, exactly. So he really wasn't working with a lot, and he starts to struggle. And I'm saying to myself, and the offensive line wasn't really at the level that he's going to be playing behind. And I said to myself, you know what? He's going to develop. He's going to be better than he was last year. And I see how he changes the game immediately when he comes in. Like, he causes the defense anguish. Like, okay, we have to worry about this guy as a runner. Because he started dominating the game immediately with his legs. Like, immediately. When he walks on the field, he feels like, you can call him crazy. When he walks on the field, he feels like he's the best player on the field. It's almost like that carried over from high school. And even now, when he walks on the field in college, he feels like, I'm the best player. I can make plays. And that's what he tries to do.
Right.
Hopefully, Tommy Rees can get him to be more of a facilitator. Like, yes, know when to use your legs now. We know you can go and make plays whenever you want to. But if you facilitate and you use all the weapons that you have now with this offensive line in front of you, now you become even better as a quarterback.
Sean, we're getting a lot of this comment in the chat too. The green hat is fire. So we've had this question. It is in the merch store. So yes, Sean got that from the merch. Well, yes, Sean wanted that hat, picked that hat out from the merch store. So yes, it is in the merch store. I think that's the thing too, Sean, is that people need to understand is Notre Dame doesn't view Tyler Buchner as a runner that they're trying to develop as a passer.
Yeah.
They view him as a dual threat quarterback because of what he did last year in practices and games. Like Notre Dame wisely used the skill set that they lacked in the offense that he had. That's why he ran like he did. They didn't do that because he can't do other things.
Yeah.
Now, was he as advanced as Jack as a passer and reading defenses and all that? No, he wasn't there as a true freshman compared to Jack as a fifth-year senior, who's a smart, veteran, experienced kid who had taken a team to a Rose Bowl and a Big Ten championship, right? He wasn't there yet, but he has the tools. It was just about experience. He didn't play high school football as a senior. He missed all of his sophomore year with an injury. And so, but now that's been shaken off a little bit. He has to now prove he can be healthy. But everyone that I've talked to in any way, shape, form, or fashion associated with the Notre Dame football team tells me the same thing. If 12 can stay healthy, that guy's going to be a problem for people. Yeah. He's really good. And that's from people who don't get to experience his running as much as defenses in the fall. We're going to experience his running.
I agree.
I agree. And that's why he's number one.
Just to clarify on Drew Pine, I've called him a people's champ for the last year. So it wasn't that it scared. When I say the blue and gold game scared me, it's because I was of the mindset coming into the blue and gold game in spring practice that Notre Dame can go into the horseshoe and win with either quarterback. Mm-hmm. That's what I believe. Like we can go in with either quarterback and win. Now I'm more of the mindset, wait a minute. Tyler really needs to be the quarterback for us to go in and win that game. We still could probably be very competitive with Drew.
Yeah.
But to come up with a big time play in crunch time, I would feel more comfortable with Tyler at the helm than I would Drew. I know we can win football games with Drew. That's not the question.
Right.
It just made me back up.
Can you win a championship with Drew? That's still a question mark.
Yeah. That's still
and maybe he proves us wrong, but that's a question, more of a question mark for me. Where Tyler, it's more about, does he have the experience? Can he, improve and all that? Where Drew, it's like, okay, is he good enough to win a championship?
Yeah.
Notre Dame's a 10+ win team with with Drew Pine at quarterback. I have no doubt. And I would even push back a little bit on your Ohio State thing. I don't think it's a given that they'd lose. What I would say is, and I'm curious if you agree with this, Sean, it just means everybody else has to play even better. It puts more pressure on the O-line. It puts a lot more pressure on the defense because now you're going to have to win 27-24.
Yeah.
Or 24-20. It's harder.
I still feel like I said, it's not about win or lose. Mm-hmm. I feel we're going to compete with either quarterback. Fourth quarter,
right?
I want Tyler. If I have my choice of the quarterbacks, fourth quarter with the game on the line in the horseshoe, give me Tyler Buckner. That's it solidified that. They were kind of, I wouldn't say they were equal, but it really wasn't that much of a discrepancy between the two. Now there's a little bit more of a gap, in my opinion, of who I would want to be at the helm in a tough situation against Ohio State and against Clemson. Forecasting that to November of the season. So when I say, man, that scared me, I'm not saying, please, no one leave here today saying Sean called Drew Pine a buster. That's
right, because we already know everybody says you hate Tyler Buchner.
Absolutely. So now I hate Tyler Buchner and Drew Pine's a buster. The sky is falling.
Yeah, because again, we're talking about a guy that can put a team on his shoulders. We're admitting that there are some potential warts that could pop up on the offensive side of the ball this year. Yeah. Injuries, things like that. To have a quarterback that can say, okay, I got this, right? Yeah. In a way where with Drew, I got this, because Drew will say I got this, and his leadership and intelligence and confidence, but still Drew, he's dependent on, I'm throwing you the ball, now go do something with it. I'm making the check to hand you off the football. Now do something with it.
Right.
Tyler can say, I got this. Give me the ball.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
And that type of quarterback can elevate a program. I mean, what has Louisville been since Lamar Jackson's been gone? Right?
They struggle. Yeah.
Look at Clemson now that they don't have a Deshaun or a Trevor Lawrence. They're not the same program.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's a different animal. And Tyler Buchner can be that guy, which is why he's not my number one. But I'm gonna be honest with you, it was not an easy answer for me. I mean, I thought really long and hard about Michael Mayer. I thought really long and hard about Lorenzo Styles. I especially thought long and hard about Cam Hart and Isaiah Foskey. But at the end of the day, it's still going to come down to quarterback for me.
Yeah, I saw someone mention Mayer's Lufau in the chat.
Yeah,
and it goes back to what you're saying, just understanding the depth at certain positions. And it's
with JD can play Will.
Yeah,
Prince Colley.
Yeah.
Jalen Sneed, Nolan Ziegler. I think they'll be okay there. Now, are any of those guys as good as Maris? No. Right? But that's true of all these positions. Like, there's a drop-off if they lose any of those guys. Same with Joe Alt, same with Blake Fisher, same with Braden Lindsey, same with Brandon Joseph, same with, I mean, a lot of these positions. Riley Mills, Jason Adamiola, I thought long and hard about. He's another one because I feel like the thing about Jason, and I don't know if I mentioned him or not, I meant to. He's written on my list. The thing about Jason is I feel like the reason I thought long and hard about Jason is, number one, not only is the next guy there not as good as him, but the potential options may have to be you move Riley Mills back inside. Now you've impacted two positions negatively if he goes down.
Yeah.
You may have to put Riley inside at 3 technique, which means now you don't have your best 3 technique on the field and you don't have your best big end on the field. And that's another reason why I considered going Jason Adamiola. And I forgot he's written on my list. I forgot to mention him because they don't have anybody else like him. There's good players there, but they may have to shuffle guys around, and then that now impacts you at multiple places. Where if Foskey goes down or is out or not on or is just getting a breather, you've got guys that are playing there. You don't have to take someone from another position. Same with safety, same with corner. With Jason, it's going to require somebody to might have to require somebody to move to get your best 4 on the field, and that's concerning for me.